There we go. Hi, everybody. We're going to give you a few minutes to jump on. Hope everybody's having a great start to their week. We are really excited about today's webinar, so hold tight. We're going to get kicking here in just a hot minute. See people trickling in. That's a good sign. Good sign. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my stuff out of the way. I am just a small portion of this, but I want to welcome you to the Milton Mental Wellness. That is such a long sentence right there. The Milton Mental Wellness webinar. We might have to change that one next year so I do a little bit better, but we are so grateful you're here. Today's topic is From Heartache to Growth, Understanding Trauma, Grief, and the Power of Support. My name is Christy Weeks. I am the Communications Manager for the City of Milton, and I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to go over a handful of housekeeping items for you, just to make sure we're all on the same page. All the participants, your video and your mics are muted. They will remain that way throughout the webinar. However, if you choose to ask a question or want to communicate, go ahead and enter it in the chat box and we'll be sure to see that. There will be a time where we take a break and let you ask questions, and then all of our presenters will have the opportunity to address those at that point. At any point, you can ask anything through the Q&A, and this is being recorded. So if you choose to go back or want to share this webinar with somebody that you think would benefit from it, you will be able to do so because it will be living on our website, and I will share that link very shortly in the chat box. So with all of that, I am going to happily pass this on to Mayor Jameson. Thank you for being here, Mayor.
Thank you, Christy, and good evening. I am Milton's Mayor, Peyton Jameson, and it is my honor to welcome you to the Milton Mental Wellness webinar. We have been doing this for many years now in close partnership with the LRJ Foundation, and we're grateful to have its co-founder, Teresa Rusby, with us once more to help offer this impactful program. Thank you too to Maddie and Riley Paul, as well as the professionals from JCAC Counseling for offering their stories and expertise during tonight's online event. We host this webinar every September, bringing in powerful, impactful voices to shine a spotlight on mental health. It's part of a multifaceted effort that aims to raise awareness, share resources, offer support, and do what we can to reduce the stigma around discussing one's mental health struggles and getting help. We know many people in Milton and beyond struggle every day, and too often many do so in silence. We want them to know that help is out there and that they are not alone. Tonight's focus hits home for many of us. We all experience trauma and grief at some point, and over the next hour or so, we'll hear about raw personal experiences, gain valuable understanding, and leave better equipped to cope with trauma and grief. With that, thank you for joining us for this webinar, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Jameson. We are so excited to be here again for our 7th annual Milton Mental Wellness webinar. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We are grateful for the City of Milton once again for partnering with the LRJ Foundation on this important conversation. Over the next hour, you'll hear from voices with very personal experiences, as well as experts who dedicate their work to helping others heal. We'll be joined by Maddie and Riley Paul, who bravely share their journey of loss and resilience after the passing of their father's suicide just 1 year ago. And we'll also learn from Jenny Voss, a certified traumatologist, and Rachel Brunell, a certified grief specialist with JCAC Counseling, who will share valuable tools and perspectives for navigating trauma and grief in healthy, supportive ways. We know that these are heavy but universal topics, and tonight is about creating a safe, hopeful space where we can learn, connect, and remind each other that none of us are alone in this journey. I would like to introduce Erica Gregory. She's a licensed professional counselor and the owner of Johns Creek Alpharetta Counseling, known as JCAC, throughout this webinar. So thank you for you and your team for being with us this evening. First, I would like to introduce the LRJ Foundation. So we are excited to be within this community. LRJ Foundation started 14 years ago in the state of Pennsylvania, and is led by a team of mental health professionals and educators committed to youth and wellness. I am the co-founder and executive director and proud to serve in this position for you and your children and communities around the tri-states that we work with. We have 3 active chapters, and we have educated near 90,000 individuals, mostly between the ages of 12 and 18 years old, as we go into schools and provide interactive mental wellness presentations on mental health, wellness, suicide prevention, while also equipping our students with essential mindset and leadership skills. Together, we go by our mantra of better than yesterday. We really believe that mindset matters when it comes to suicide prevention awareness, and that's forming connections like we're doing here this evening. And now I would like to introduce Erica Gregory.
Thank you so much, Theresa. My name is Erica Gregory. I'm a counselor and I'm the owner of JCAC Counseling. We're a center that offers counseling services across the lifespan for adults, teens, couples, and children. In addition, we offer our Healing Through Connection podcast and YouTube channel with the mission of sharing accurate mental health information in a misinformation TikTok world. I'm going to introduce our 2 amazing JCA counselors, but next slide. But before I do, I would love to introduce that we are partnering. We're so excited to be partnering with the city of Milton to be offering this mental health fair in the fall. It's going to be family fun. It's going to be empowerment for parents and adults on how to have conversations about anxiety, about depression, about suicide prevention, while at the same time offering you a free lunch, a free family fun video, or free family photo, and some fun for your children. That'll be at the City of Milton Community Center on October 25th. If you're interested in learning more, you can scan that QR code, and we'll be pumping out a lot more information about this after this lecture. Alrighty, next slide. Our first speaker tonight, who is covering trauma, is Jenny Vos, licensed professional counselor. She is a certified traumatologist. She is the internship supervisor at JCA Counseling. She specializes in EMDR trauma counseling with children, teens, and adults. And she offers pet-assisted therapy with her therapy dog, Zoe, you see there in the picture. Our second speaker who will be covering grief is Rachel Brunell. She's an associate professional counselor. She sees clients virtually in Georgia and in Florida, and she specializes in grief counseling specifically for women who've experienced loss in the prenatal and postpartum seasons. Rachel also sees adults and teens offering CBT and DBT counseling and works with couples using Prepare and Enrich. So I will pass it off to Jenny to get us started with the lecture.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. So I wanted to start by sharing with you a little bit about trauma. So the very first place to start is what actually is trauma. And a definition, a really great definition, is that it's a severe emotional response to a stressful event that overwhelms a person's ability to process the whole trauma emotionally. It actually means wound or injury or shock. And so if you can think about trauma that way, that it's a wound, it's an injury, and it's a complete shock to the system. Trauma survivors continue to experience the effects well after the incident due to the way that trauma is stored in the brain. And so if we could go to the next slide, there we go. There's 2 different types of trauma. You've got the big T trauma that are major life-threatening events. Things like that we put in that category would be the natural disasters, wars, physical and sexual assault, and witnessing violence, or even the loss of a loved one. Those are things that majorly affect your life. But then there's also the little T trauma as well. And those are the smaller, more everyday events that can still be traumatizing and still do count for trauma and definitely do change the brain. Things like bullying, breakups, job loss, chronic stress, witnessing traumatic events, and domestic violence. Although I might put domestic violence in the big T trauma, but trauma nonetheless. Okay, so I want to share with you a little bit about how trauma disrupts your life. Trauma gets stored in your brain, and specifically in this little almond-shaped structure that's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is basically the brain's recorder of all of the bad things that happen in your life. The amygdala is very, very primal, and it only says three things: fight, flight, or freeze. When the amygdala is engaged, the prefrontal cortex, which is the very first, the frontal part of your brain, that's the part that's responsible for logic and reasoning. And that goes completely and totally offline. And then the amygdala is in charge, saying one of those three things. It makes it feel to the survivor as if the trauma is happening again in real life, right at that time, with all of the feelings and with all of the emotions that were felt during that time. So things that trigger that trauma response, that amygdala response, definitely sights, sounds, and smells, or thoughts that take the survivor back into the traumatic event in some way. Some sights would be flashing lights, fireworks, music, specific places. Oh, it happened in that place. I don't want to go back there because that reminds me of that. Certain events that comes up. It can also be simple things like yellow legal pads or a blue wall or anything at all that triggers the amygdala to take over your brain and to hijack it that way. So here are some basic coping skills for trauma triggers, and this is what we work on when we work with people. This is what we call phase 1 trauma. Things that will help, these are things that help the survivor to bring back their prefrontal cortex back online. Breathing exercises, breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and breathe out for 5 seconds. You can tense and relax all of your muscles. Start at your head and tense up all the muscles in your face. Hold it for 10 seconds. Then do your shoulders, all through your core, your legs, your hands, your arms, your feet, your toes. And doing each set of those muscles, holding them for 10 seconds and releasing, will actually help to bring that prefrontal cortex back online. Taking a nice bath or shower. Water has positive ions in it, and that helps to be able to bring back those positive memories to help you to relax. Cuddling with a pet. You saw me with my little dog Zoe. All pets are definitely wonderful things that help with trauma. So cuddling with a pet is a great thing to do. Listening to a guided imagery is also a great thing to do. And I just want to put in a little plug. If you're looking for guided imageries or anything like that, or any sort of mental health help, you can go to our JCA Counseling YouTube page and our podcast. We have guided imageries there. We've got whole series on anxiety and depression and all sorts of parenting and anything else. And it's a wonderful resource, and we'd love to have you go there and spend some time there. And that's all free. You could also call a friend or a family member to help them or to have them help you. And then the last one is bilateral stimulation. And that's a way of using your right and your left brain together. You can hug yourself across your chest and then pat your right side and then pat your left side and pat your right side and your left side again. That bilateral stimulation uses your brain together to help it to reorganize that trauma. And it's definitely something that I use as part of trauma therapy. Okay, so let's talk for just a minute about when to reach out to a therapist. Now, normally the effects of trauma will subside by themselves in 4 to 6 weeks, and you can use the coping skills that I just shared in the last slide during those 4 to 6 weeks to help you to be able to regulate. However, if a survivor is struggling with flashbacks, nightmares, somatic responses, the inability to carry out duties of normal life, and it's been 4 to 6 weeks, that's when the survivor starts dealing with PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And then it really is time to seek the help of a trauma therapist like myself. So trauma treatments, what exactly do they look like? One of the most the biggest one that's out there lately is called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It uses that bilateral stimulation again to help your left and right brain to work out the trauma. And it's like if all of the file folders are open in your brain because of, or all the filing cabinets are open in your brain because of the trauma, it helps to close those so that when you think about it, it moves those traumatic thoughts from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex, where it's just a memory and it doesn't hurt anymore and it doesn't feel as if it's happening in the moment. Another great trauma therapy is called CPT, or cognitive processing therapy. And what that does is it's a little bit softer of a therapy, where EMDR, you go straight toward the trauma and you actually picture it in your brain again. Where CPT has you write the narrative of the trauma, and then you look for places that you're stuck in that. Another great therapy to do that is EFIT, which stands for Emotionally Focused Individual Therapy. And that helps you to go toward the emotions of it and really be able to process it, dealing with the emotions that you're feeling. The last one that I want to mention is trauma focused CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's another trauma therapy that helps to process through that trauma so that it doesn't hurt anymore. You can always reach out to us at Johns Creek and Alpharetta Counseling, JCAC for short. You can go to our website and just put into your Google Johns Creek and Alpharetta Counseling, and that will help you. And you can look at our wonderful website. You can choose a counselor from there. You can set up a 15-minute consultation with them, and you can schedule your first appointment. And you can reach out. There's the website, and there's our phone number, and then there's a place that you can go to our social media as well. And at this time, I'd like to bring out Rachel Burnell, who is another wonderful member of our staff, to talk to you about grief.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so we're going to talk about grief, and I thought that we would start first, since I was going to follow the trauma section, just what they have in common and how they can often overlap. As you saw, she pointed out that the loss of a loved one is considered a big T trauma, and a lot of my clients have a lot of trauma to work through in addition to their grief healing whenever they come in. And so just kind of pointing out that those oftentimes do go hand in hand, and a lot of my clients have really benefited from getting separate treatment. So seeing a trauma therapist to do some EMDR to then be ready to really go through the grief therapy more long term. So just kind of some pathways to healing. Grief healing really focuses on honoring the lost, expressing emotions, and finding ways to carry the love forward. And trauma focuses on calming that nervous system, feeling safe again, gently reprocessing what's happened, and they can often overlap. Grief will ask, how do I live without this person? Or how do I continue on? What does my future look like? How do I accept that future? And trauma will ask, am I safe now, or could this happen again? And so a lot of times those questions are combined in our experiences. And I did just want to also state that, this is something that so many of us, that grief or loss of different kinds is an unavoidable life experience. So you're not alone in that struggle. And I think you see what I have on the screen here, but that both activate an emotional and a body response, and both impact the memory and meaning, but there are paths to healing for both. We'll go to the second slide. And here I wanted to point out just some main things about grief, that it's unavoidable, like I said, that it's not linear, that setbacks are normal, and it's unique and ongoing. It's very specific to the person, what they went through, what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, where they're at. And that healing doesn't mean forgetting. Growth and grief can coexist. So I have these images here of just kind of showing that grief is more like waves crashing in rather than a straight line. It doesn't move step by step in a neat order, even though oftentimes we want it to, because our brains want to make sense of things, and to know, like, okay, I'm going to go from step 1 to step 2 and then step 3, not back to step 1, right? But it comes in waves, and some days may feel calm, and then suddenly a big wave would knock you down, right? Even after you thought that you had been maybe doing better for a period of time. And that grief is also more like the circles and the spirals there instead of a ladder. So you may revisit similar feelings like anger, sadness, acceptance in the beginning, and then years, decades, days, months down the road multiple times. But each time it will have likely a little bit of a different perspective. So it's just important to remind yourself that these experiences are unique, and that they're your own, and that there's not one right way or wrong way. I just had a client today say, like, am I doing the healing work? Am I handling my grief? And we were able to just identify all of the little things that are actually the big things that she's doing on a day-to-day basis that are pointing to the reason why she is where she is today, and how she's able to find meaning and find purpose and prioritize herself and grow personally, and honor her mom in that way. So that's been powerful. So if we'll go to this last slide here, a lot of people want to know, since loss is unavoidable and they oftentimes know somebody, if they're not actively going through that, that is, how can I be there for them? What can I say? What can I do? And some people have learned when they've been through it themselves exactly, what those people need, right? But just to understand that grief impacts the whole person. It's not just feeling sad, it's a full body, whole person experience, and really touches every part of who we are. It's going to shift the way that you think, the way that you feel, the way that you act, the way that you relate to yourself, to others, to the world around you. And that's why healing grief does take a long time, and a lot of care from many different levels. And so asking yourself how you can provide that connection and support to a grieving person is so kind, and so necessary. And just reminding yourself that it's less about fixing and more about showing up with presence, offering your presence to that person, specific help, instead of, let me know if you need anything. Try, can I bring you dinner on Tuesday? Really practicing listening more than you're talking, validating any feelings that they're experiencing for the first time or again, and not minimizing. So avoiding any phrases like, I know how you feel, at least, time heals. I always say that although maybe many people have also been through grief and been through loss, nobody has walked in your shoes with your feet. And so just remembering that your presence is about them, to be there for them, being consistent, sitting in silence. And then I always like to put in remembering those important dates, because that's meant a lot to a lot of my clients that have just shared in just the best ways that people have supported them. So as always, we've kind of reiterated that we are here to support you with whatever you're experiencing through grief and through trauma. And if you have any questions during this webinar or after, that we are still here, so you can reach out and connect, and we'd be happy to walk with you through that. And now I'll send it back to Teresa.
Rachel, thank you so much. Jenny, thank you so much. That was wonderful. It was so helpful. It really connected in so many ways. We'll pause just for a few more seconds here to see if we have any questions for you ladies. Those that are watching, you can put them in the chat and we can answer them here for you all. or you can also email us after and we can get those answered over the next couple days too. All right, well, we'll check the chat box later at the end of the webinar to see if there's any more questions that come in, but I would like to go ahead and move to our next speakers. I am very honored to introduce and welcome sisters Maddie and Riley Paul to this conversation. Just over a year ago, on August 23rd, 2024, they had experienced the heartbreaking loss of their father to suicide. In the midst of their grief, they had shown incredible resilience and strength. And most recently, through organizing their first annual Run Towards Tomorrow 5K at the Cumming City Center. Not only is this honor their father's memory, but it's also raised over $7,000 to support suicide prevention efforts through the LRJ Foundation. And tonight, they're here to share their journey, the lessons that they've learned, and the hope they want to pass along to others. Riley and Maddie, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. So I'm Maddie. I just wanted to give a background on kind of why we're here. So as Teresa said, a little over a year ago, I was getting ready to leave for work when the police showed up at our house. It was the moment that changed everything. And they had told us that they had found our father. It's a moment that no one should ever have to live through, but tragically, it's a reality that so many families face every single day. My father, Brad Paul, died by suicide on August 23rd, 2024. My dad was an amazing guy. He was a runner, an entrepreneur, and after his career in photography, he became a teacher for children with special needs. After he passed, his school hosted a celebration of life in Florida. My sister and I were honored to get to attend and listen as staff and students shared their memories of him. I'll never forget something that someone there said to me. They said, when someone takes their own life, the pain does not go away. It passes on to someone else. That's something that really stuck with me, and I've carried those words ever since. Losing someone is always incredibly hard, but losing someone by their own hand leaves a unique kind of pain. It's a grief that comes with questions that may never be answered. Over the past year, I learned the term suicide survivor. I used to think that that meant someone who had survived an attempt. I did not realize that it applies to those of us that have been left behind and those of us who are trying to survive the loss of someone that we loved. The questions that come after losing someone this way are very endless. What could I have done differently? Why was I not enough to help them stay? Did I do something wrong? You play these thoughts over and over in your head, even though deep down, you know, you just may never get the answers. And it's something that really changes you. A few weeks after losing my dad, one of my coworkers told me, you used to be funnier. As small as that might sound, it is something that hurts because they were correct. I lost a part of myself, but you do start to rebuild and you do move forward, but you are never going to be quite the same. There's always a piece missing. And one of the things that has helped me the most through this past year has been community. I haven't attended any formal suicide survivor groups yet, but it is something that I truly would like to do. In the meantime, I have found community of people who have lost loved ones to suicide as well. It's a different kind of love, and one that comes from strangers who understand your pain in a way that few others can't. The sense of connection, of shared understanding has been healing in ways I never expected. That's why we put on Running Towards Tomorrow, not only to honor our father, but to honor every single life that we have lost to suicide, to raise awareness for mental health, and to remind people that struggling with mental health is nothing to be ashamed of, to let people know that there is help and there is hope. I try to let those know around that are struggling that there are people who love them and that there are people who want them to stay. The world is truly a better place with everyone here in it. So I started asking the questions to those around me, how they're doing, and I try to dig in mentally, encourage them to open up, make sure people know how much I care. And when I see a stranger, I try to make them smile. It's a small task of kindness that can be a lifeline to people who need it. These are simple things that all of us can do in September, which is Suicide Awareness Month, but also every day in life, because we can't always know what people are carrying, but we can definitely help them carry it. And then the next slide, whenever. Were there any questions?
Not quite yet, Maddie.
So, one of the questions that we have been asked was if we could share a little bit about what our first year has been like for us, and what helped us navigate those hardest moments. Something that we have really done is we've leaned on family, friends, community, anyone that will listen to our story. We talk their heads off about it. Um, we make sure that they know, you know, our story and they're not alone. I have gone through extensive trauma therapy. Um, I specifically have done EMDR and am a huge advocate for that kind of therapy. Um, we have looked for the light and happiness in the small things. So last year, we decorated just a little bit earlier for Christmas. You know, it was going to be our first holiday without our dad, and we were kind of dreading it. We didn't know what the emotion would be, if we even wanted to celebrate. And so we decorated early, and it was probably the best thing that we could have done. We took our time with it and just had all the stories of when he would put this decoration up in the house and talk about, you know, his favorite stories. Um, you know, and something I've done is I've taken an extra moment, you know, to stare and appreciate the sunsets. It's just a small thing that I've really taken in.
Riley, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important. Just our whole conversation today, right, on grief and trauma, and in a sense, it's a little bit of that too, right, in the beginning. And all you've done, it's so impactful to hear that we have to do something, right? We can't just sit with our loss and grief because it can really turn, I think, ourselves into a negative place and really can fit a locked a part of our life. So thank you so much for sharing those. And it's so meaningful. And I think so many other people can use those tips and little things, just the small moments. I'm sure many people love Christmas. Wouldn't mind decorating early, right? We always hear on the radio, like, oh, right after, Halloween, they're ready to decorate for Christmas. So I love that you did that and you found what works for you. And I think that's so important that others can find what works for them. And it can be the most outlandish thing or crazy thing, but it works for them. That's all that matters. And so I love that. I really kind of wanted to think back and something I have really kind of labeled with myself over the years was turning pain into purpose. And when I met you two, I felt that as well. Your story really resonated with me, just like yourself. I lost my brother to suicide. And I realized I had to get involved in something and do something. And it really is connection. Not everyone has to start a nonprofit, right? But someone to do something to get involved with another nonprofit or volunteering or your community. And with your first event of Run Towards Tomorrow 5K, which was such a success. I ran the event. It was so much fun. And I really look forward to next year's race as well. Um, really just was wondering, with this particular event, like what inspired like this particular event for you all? And it must have meant so much to see so many people come out, not just in memory of your father, but in support of suicide prevention, and really just how this journey, inspired you to start this.
Yeah, so the idea of running towards tomorrow, it actually came from something pretty simple, but also very deeply meaningful. It kind of all started with a pair of socks. After our dad passed, our family went down to Florida to pack up some of his things. It's not something really that you're ever prepared for, just going through a loved one's belongings. I'll never forget when we pulled open his sock drawer, we found these very high, colorful Grateful Dead socks. And in the moment, my aunt said, we should all run a 5K together and wear these because these really need to be seen. So at the time, it was kind of just an idea, but it is something that stuck with us. We grew up in Forsyth County, and it wasn't really until the start of 2025 when we lost 4 people in Forsyth County to suicide within the first 4 weeks of the new year. Um, and I think that's when we decided that we really needed to do something more. We realized that how urgent the issue had become, and we had kind of felt our calling to turn our grief into action here. Not only to remember our dad, but to make a difference. But seeing the community come together the way that they did for the race was very overwhelming in the best way. Riley and I had such an incredible support system, from family and friends to local sponsors and even just complete strangers. People showed up, they shared their stories, they ran, they walked, and we even wore our socks. Um, and so doing so, they helped us create something bigger than we could have ever imagined. And we are so grateful.
I love that. That's awesome. I think there's something, and someone else had a question too, and there's something else I was going to share and ask you both. But many people hearing this story, it may also be struggling. They may have lost someone as well, just to any type of loss, not just suicide, but going through grief and their own mental health, right? Is there anything you found over this past year that maybe it was a certain resource or a website or anything that stood out to you that you found maybe helpful, or anything you share that maybe was really impactful for you to help you through this journey?
Um, about 2 weeks after we lost our dad, we had gone up to visit a family friend, in Indiana, and she's near and dear to our hearts. And she had gifted us both a journal, and it's Letters to My Dad. I've never been one to journal. Um, I was appreciative, but kind of brushed it off. And then one day I found myself going to try and call my dad. I had some question, probably about my car or something like that. And I was like, you know what? This is something that I could write in my journal, that I would be calling him about it. Why wouldn't I write him a letter? And so I have found journaling, just writing letters to him about, hey, I'm on this flight going to do this trip, and this is on my itinerary, stuff like that. I've also, I don't have an exact book that I have gotten into, but I have personally done a lot of trauma research. I've actually decided to go the path of trauma therapy, to get my master's degree in so I can put my pain to purpose. And so that's what I have kind of used over the past year.
I would agree. The journal has been a lot of help. And I'm kind of in the same boat as Riley. I've never done it before, but it's just like when we want to make a phone call to him, like she said, I will write down exactly what I would say in my phone call and every reason that I would want to call him, which has been great. Riley and I also, since moving further up north, we didn't have a church anymore. And so we have gotten back into our church community, and found a spot that we really love. And so I think that's another part of our journey that has helped us a lot.
That's amazing. Thank you both so much for sharing that. I'm sure others can find that helpful. And again, it's something I've never done, but it's something I might want to try. It's the same thing. I'll just, talk, to my brother and those that were missing, and reaching out to a therapist or counselor. And so I'm excited to hear from you both as you go through this and continue to support yourselves and others, what that looks like. So thank you both so very much. Anything else that you wanted to share or add?
I wanted to share today, that I know that speaking up about it can be scary. It's kind of taboo. You don't really talk about suicide in public. And I have found that talking to everyone, not only educates, but it kind of grows you closer to the person next to you. Maddie and I have become regulars at a local place, and we got to know everyone by us sharing our story with some other regulars. And about 3 months of regularly seeing these people talking, how are you? How's everything going with the grief? I had one of the guys come over to me, and he asked me, Riley, can I see you over here for a moment in private? And I said, yeah, of course. No problem. And so I go and chat with him, and he was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I have struggled with my own mental health for the last 10 years. I have 3 daughters. They're a little bit younger than you two, but you sharing your story and me seeing the pain and the grief and what you all are doing to help others, I just want to let you know that you two are my angels on this earth because you have saved my life. I could never put my daughters through what you two are going through. And that is when I had the realization that I'm not going to stop talking. And I'll talk to anyone about it. There's a lot of benefit when you talk about even the taboo things.
You're so right. Thank you. I love that you did that. It's your calling, right? And
Yeah.
you have this, your father left you a gift and you're doing that. And I'm just so, so proud of you girls. So very proud. And I connect as having a sister who lost someone and having the great resources that we have. We have to use our resources. The education we learned on this webinar, all that's available for us. It's truly so important that we use our resources and connect and talk. I just want to thank you so much for your courage to speak openly about your loss and your determination to turn pain into purpose. Everyone doesn't have a timeline. You know, a year seems kind of soon. Some people may take years, and I want them to take that time and do that. But when they're ready, they'll know that time. Hosting the Run Towards Tomorrow 5K and raising thousands of dollars to support suicide prevention is a powerful example of how love and resilience can ripple out and bring hope to people, just like the story you just shared, Riley. I know your dad would be so incredibly proud, just like we are, and the impact that you're making. So on behalf of the LRJ Foundation and everyone here, we're so grateful for your voices and the light that you're bringing to this important conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. We are so happy to be a part of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Well, if there is any other questions or comments, please, if you don't leave them in the chat today, you can also email me. I'll get them over to our team of counselors, and they'll be happy to send a response back to you. This has been very enlightening, and I hope you feel the same way. So on behalf of the City of Milton and the LRJ Foundation and JCAC, thank you for being a part of this important conversation. We appreciate your commitment to mental wellness, and we look forward to continuing this journey together towards being better than yesterday. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. To the panel today, you all have carried such an amazing message, and we're grateful that you could join us today. All the contact information has been put out. Feel free if there's any further information. All of this will be on our website. I will also include the contact information for the LRJ Foundation and for JCAC counseling. So the resources will be there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Teresa. If you, I know my name appears up there as Stacy Inglis. I am not Stacy Inglis. I am Christy Weeks, but I am happy to do whatever I can to help along those ways. And Teresa and I had a wonderful conversation earlier this month on the Milton podcast, Milton in Maine. And you can find that on our website as well if you want to take a listen, because it was a very, very enlightening and robust conversation. And I was so grateful that she was able to join me for that as well. So with that, if there's anybody else with comments, questions, concerns, I think we're ready to wrap this up. Teresa?
Sounds good. Chrissy, thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it.
Of course. Look forward to it next year. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next year.